Well, yeah, tits. Yes, if you don't know, tits are breasts. Nature rewarded me with 2 melons and before you get jealous, tell me how cool and beautiful it is. I'll tell you about the pros and cons of such an award. Well, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and write your opinion in the comments. Please support me. So, my whole childhood was like everyone else's. I played, met children, and everything was fine until I was 10 years old. At this stage, girls begin the so-called growing up. It was a terrible period because my caring mother would not let me rest. She examined me every day and observed the changes in my body, and I was so uncomfortable, and I really wanted to be left alone, but it didn't happen. My favorite items in my wardrobe were t-shirts and sweatshirts. I just loved wearing them because you could eat as much as you wanted in them and you still couldn't see your stomach. Well, once my mother and I were going to go to some holiday. It was a wedding, I think. My mom bought me a nice white t-shirt with a small net and something else. "Mom, what is this?" I asked her, and she was like, "This is a bra. You are now grown up, and so you need to wear it. You can take them off at night and only walk with it during the day," she said. I picked it up, my first bra in my life, and realized that it was uncomfortable. Rejecting the idea of trying it on, I put on a t-shirt and said I would go like this. My mother did not contradict me. We quickly gathered and went to the event. I went there in a good mood because I just loved to look at the brides. They looked just magical. I sat down at the table and realized that the kid sitting across from me was staring at me. At first I didn't know where he was looking, but then I looked closer and noticed that he was looking at my breasts. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the full-length mirror. Only then did I notice that my chest was sticking out and more, well, you know what. It was a nightmare. I felt ashamed and embarrassed. I went to my mother and told her about the situation. She smiled and said, "I brought you something to wear. You have grown breasts and there is nothing wrong with that. A woman without breasts, like without arms, all girls have them." Then the music started playing and I wanted to dance so much. I just loved dancing. But when I went out on the dance floor and made a couple of rhythmic movements, I realized that they were bothering me. And that kid was still staring at me. I immediately sat down at the table and sat hunched over all evening. I didn't want to get up and be looked at all. Of course, the adults didn't see it, but that boy, he really confused me. Running home in the evening, I took a shower and picked up the bra. Somehow I put it on myself and looked in the mirror. My mother came into the room at that moment and said that it fits perfectly. I didn't understand what that means. How can breasts look great at all? My mother said that this device holds the chest when walking and running, and then we are not hurt or uncomfortable. I wore it to school the next day and still didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't want to discuss my body with the girls, but they still saw it when we changed in the locker room. I began to hide it, and then it turned out that 8 of my classmates already wear such things. This calmed me down. And then the nightmare started. My breasts were growing non-stop. After a couple of months, my mother bought me a bra in a bigger size, and then another and another. When I returned to school after the summer holidays, my classmates were totally freaking out. They didn't see me, they saw my breasts. And even the big white t-shirts couldn't hide them. At the first lesson, when I sat down at my desk, I realized that my breasts did not fit there. I sat down closer, but I squeezed them hard. It caused pain, and then I had to put them on the table. You won't believe it, but I closed half of my notebook. I was still sitting on the first desk in front of the teacher, and when the historian came to us, said hello and sat down in his paused for a minute. Can you imagine how awkward it was? All the kids in the class noticed his reaction and just started laughing out loud. Their laughter finally distracted the teacher, and he blushed, then asked me to move back. I was ready to sink through the ground. But then, something even gym class. For your information, I'm a pretty good dancer. Yes, it's true. And I have great flexibility. And I was determined to get into a cheerleading group because it offered huge advantages for high school students to go to college. Who doesn't need a scholarship to study? Everyone. But for this, you need to be active and persistent. So cheerleading is the best thing. I was put on the girls' team because of the plastic surgery, and our captain didn't hide the fact that my gorgeous breasts would have an effect. Well, for the sake of such a case, I agreed, but I didn't think that I would need to wear a certain uniform. I was given a short skirt and a crop top and invited to a rehearsal. As soon as I entered the hall, our boys started whistling, calling me Elya Tits and clapping their hands. Damn, I wanted to get out of there, but I set a clear goal and went with it. So I took all my will and started dancing. Our boys were often distracted from the game, watching my breasts jump. Sometimes they threw the ball in my direction and asked me to pick it up. I was maddened by the humiliation. Training turned into a nightmare, and I came home in a bad mood. My mother immediately noticed the tears and sat down to talk to me. I told her everything, and then my mother got up and led me to the bedroom. She showed me a photo when she was young, and I couldn't believe it was her. My mother had the same breasts as me. They were huge. My mother laughed a lot when she told me about them. I asked her how she coped with them, and my mother said that it was also awkward and difficult for her, but then she just accepted herself like this. By the way, your dad married me because of them, and you won't believe it, but everyone was jealous of him. It is now they are smaller and not as elastic and beautiful as yours, but women's breasts are very beautiful, she told me. My mother took another bra out of the closet, but it was open work black with wide straps, and she gave it to me. I also said that it would be much more comfortable for me, and it also made me feel different, more feminine. And you know, she was right. As soon as I tried it on, I saw a different side of myself and realized that I was beautiful. My participation in cheerleading will only get better. I straightened up and smiled at myself. The very next day, I came to school in new underwear and a beautiful blouse. I began to be perceived differently, as a lady, and not as a kid in sweatshirts. Now, all the training sessions I gathered an audience of boys from my class and others, and I felt like a queen. I realized that I should be proud of such a natural part of myself. Do you think it's beautiful or not? Hello everyone, my name is Edna. I want to share with you my achievements, especially how I